following episode of Dad vs. Daughter was made possible by a contribution from Tasty Minstrel Games. Pioneer Days from Tasty Minstrel Games is a dice drafting game kind of set in the vein of the Oregon Trail. So you know what that means. It means that we are going to be having certain things along the way that's probably going to kill us. We're going to have to deal with storms. We're going to have to deal with raids they're going to take our money. We're going to have to deal with famine to our cattle and disease to our townsfolk. So let's see how the game is played and then hear what Dad's lunch group thinks of it. I have the game set up for 2 players. In a 2-player game, you are going to use the number of players plus 1 when you set up equipment. So you'll notice I have 3 equipment there. And the number of sets of dice that I'm going to use. So in a 2-player game, I'll use 3 sets of dice. These other 2 dice sets I will not use. I'll take these sets of dice and I will put them in the magic black bag. A couple other things about setup. We are going to use a total of 9 city cards. Now there's a stack of cards. I already have these set up here. We have 2 for the active city, and then we have the rest in a stack. Now those are going to come into play at the end of the week, and I'll talk about that when we get to that point. The first thing we're going to do is we have a stack of player cards, and we're going to basically deal 2 of these out to each player. You're going to be able to choose one. Of course, Megan would probably choose the redhead. And let's just say that I chose Trent the entrepreneur. So when we do the setup for the characters, we're going to look and see what are their starting resources. Each one of us is going to get a wagon. Now, Michelle actually gets the small wagon. And the difference between a large wagon and a small wagon is that the small wagon has 2 less spaces. So you'll notice this is kind of a canvas covering that. So we'll place the wagons next to our player board there, and you'll notice it kind of creates a little panoramic picture. The other starting resources, so Michelle starts with 1 cattle, put that on her board, 1 gold, and we'll take that out of the magic gold bag. These are worth victory points at the end of the game. They're either worth anywhere from 1 to 3, 1 being the most prevalent and 3 being the rarest. So that will take up 1 spot inside the wagon. The other thing is Michelle starts with 3 silver. So we'll put 3 silver on her board. Now Trent starts with the large wagon like I showed you. Also starts with 1 wood, which is this small little piece, and that goes there. 1 medicine, and you'll notice it's the same size as the wood. That will go there. And these are smaller than the normal size tokens. So this means that we can actually fit 2 of one kind in one of the wagon holds. So I could put another wood with that wood and another medicine with that medicine. The other thing that Trent is going to start with is he will also start with a gold nugget. So draw 1 out of the bag. He gets a 3. He's probably going to want to keep that because that's 3 victory points at the end of the game. We have this nice wooden first player marker. And let's be honest, Megan would always be that first player. So we'll just put that next to her board. You'll see that we have 6 townsfolk out, and we have our disaster track starting on the first part. So let's talk about the disaster track. So this is very much like Oregon Trail, where we are going to have certain things that we have to overcome or it's going to kill us. Not really. But we have storms, we have raids, we have famine and disease, and they all basically work against certain things. Storms work against wagons because we can get damaged if we do not have enough wood. So it says you must pay 1 wood for each wagon. Place a damage token on each one of your wagons that you cannot pay for. So that damage token is going to be worth -2 victory points at the end of the game. Plus, it's also going to cover up 2 holds on your wagons. The raids are going to take half of your money rounded up. So if the raid were to hit this, Michelle would lose 2 of her silver because half of 3 would be rounded up would be 2. Famine attacks our cattle. So you must pay 1 silver for every cattle. For every one that you can't, your cattle dies. So if you don't have a silver, bye-bye. And then finally, disease. You must pay 1 medicine for each townsfolk that you have. And if you can't then those townsfolk die and they're out of the game. Speaking of townsfolk, let's take a look at them. We've got different kinds. We have some that offer immediate benefits, like the wagon builder here, who says you may buy one large wagon for one wood. Now this is an immediate effect because of that symbol. At the bottom, this tells us what end of game bonuses we're going to get. So as long as we still have this townsfolk alive, they're going to give us 1 VP per small wagon and 2 VPs for every large wagon. Now, we also have the risk taker here. Now they have an ongoing effect. So the risk taker says you may pay 1 less wood or medicine to fulfill the needs of 1 town card each week. So filling the needs of the town is kind of a big thing. And what we're going to do when we get to the end of the week, to fulfill what the town wants, we're going to look and see. Here is one of those town cards. 1 gold token equals 1 favor and 3 silver. So we can take a gold token, which is value 1, 2, or 3, from our wagon. We can discard it, and then we would get 1 favor and 3 silver. Now, there are 2 at the start of the game. For the first 3 rounds, we're always going to have 2 cards for the city. In the 3rd round, we're actually going to flip this one up, and the last one, and we'll have 3. Now, our characters have certain special abilities. We could have played on the backside. They all have this standard pioneer, which everybody gets the same starting resources. But this is the ability side. So Michelle's, hers says, before triggering equipment, you may change your die face to one of your choice. If you do, you must choose the income for your action. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Trent's is, each round, if you satisfy the needs of at least 1 town card, you're going to gain an extra favor. So favors are worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. So the easiest way to kind of explain this board is to kind of walk you through a turn. Now the first player, what they're going to do, they're going to take the magic black bag. They're going to pull out a number of dice equal to the number of players plus 1. So in a 2-player game, I'm going to pull 3 dice randomly. I'm going to roll those dice, and then I'm going to assign those to the various spots on the board. So you can see sometimes we will actually get multiples of the same thing. Now, you have a choice to make. You can either take the die for the income that's printed above that, which it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can take it for what the die's ability is. So this is a wild one, which would allow me to change that to any other die face. The third thing I can do is I can take the townsfolk person, recruit them, that's under that. So I could take, in this round, it would be the risk taker or the wagon builder. So once I decide which one of these dice that I want to take, I take it, and then I look to see if that triggered anything. So let's say this was not a wild. Let's say this was a pickaxe. I would look at my wagon to see if I had any equipment such as this one that would trigger. You can see there's the trigger there. Every time I take a die that has that, it's going to trigger what this ability is. In this case, I would actually get 1 medicine. So after that is done, then I decide, do I want to take the income from that spot? Do I want to take the die ability, which in this case would be to mine gold, so I'd take a gold nugget out of the bag, or do I want to recruit that townsfolk? Then when I take that townsfolk, I'm going to look and see, do they have an immediate action or an ongoing action? If they have an immediate, then I'll do that right away, and then that townsperson really is going to sit until the end of the game when I use their in-game bonus. If it's an ongoing effect, I'm always going to keep that in mind. So like this one says, I can pay 2 silver, upgrade a wagon from a small to a large, or I can remove a damage token. So I can do that each time on my turn as long as I can fulfill the requirements of that card. So let's just say that this was taken, and the next player in clockwise order takes their turn, and they decide to take this, and they do their abilities, or they made their choice. Whatever that die is that is left over, because there will always be 1, we'll place that over here on the track, and then they will move that special disaster track up 1. Now, there are black dice, and you'll notice that there are no black disasters. If there is a black die that is left, then that also gets placed over here on the board. but every one of the disaster tracks moves forward. So this is a way that if there's something that you really want to mess with the other players, you can make sure that you leave that black die if you're the last player, or if you don't want to set that off and try to basically protect everybody, be a team player, then you might want to take that black die. We'll know it's the end of the week when the black bag is completely empty and there are no dice left. So all the dice are on the board. So then what we do is we look to see if any of our townsfolk have any of the end of the week conditions. After that, we will score based on the cattle we have. We get 1 point. So in this case, Michelle has 1 cattle, so she would move up 1 space on the victory trail. Trent has no cattle, so he does not get any money. Then we look to see who can fulfill the needs of the town. Everybody that does can get a favor token based on what the town says it will pay you. Then what we do is any of the townsfolk that were unclaimed are taken away. New ones are put out. We do the same with the equipment. Any unused equipment is removed, and we will flip new ones over based on the player count plus 1. And then finally, we will remove the city cards and we will place 2 new ones out. Now, like I said, at the end of the game, you're going to have 3 cards left. So the last city that you get to will be set up like that. Now, speaking of the last round, the game is played over 4 weeks. So what we would do is there is a final disaster after we do all of our scoring, but before we go to visit the town. So the final disaster moves every one of the disaster tracks up by 1. Now, during the course of the game, when a disaster track gets to the end, you will fire those off based from top to bottom. And then once those are resolved, then those get reset. We're going to add up all of our points. Remember, those points come with the favor tokens. We're going to look and see if we have any of the negative points. Money is not worth anything additional. Then we will look at any of the townsfolk cards that we have to see if their special abilities are going to give us any victory points. So in the case of Professor Claire, she'll give 1 VP for every townsfolk that we have. So let's say if we have 4 townsfolk that are still alive at the end of the game, we're going to get a VP for each one of those, so 4 points. What you really want to do is you want to try to get townsfolk that give the same abilities. So let's just say if I was going for cattle, I would try to get all the townsfolk that I had or that were available that gave VPs for the cattle at the end of the game. Likewise, if I'm trying to hoard wood or medicine or any of the other resources, I want to try to basically get as many of those as possible because that's going to give me a lot of victory points at the end of the game. So I was talking about equipment earlier and how that triggers. Each of these equipment, not all of them, but some of these, have these little trigger symbols. So that means that when we take that die face, the first thing we're going to do before we do anything else with that die is we're going to see if this triggers. In the case of this one, if I take a cow die, this is going to trigger. And if I look at my player board here, it will tell me that I'm going to get 1 extra cattle. The equipment list is the same on all players' boards. One thing I may have forgotten to mention is at the end of the week, when you do reset your townsfolk and your equipment and your city cards, you're also going to take all of the dice and you will put them back into the magic black bag. First player then will rotate to the next player clockwise, and then the next player starts the next round by drawing out the number of dice from the bag. On your turn, another thing that you can do is actually spend your silver in a couple of different ways. So the first thing you can do is you can actually buy additional wagons. Now you can buy a small wagon that has the 4 holds on there for 5 silver, or you can spend 8 silver and buy the large wagon. The other thing that you can do with your silver is that on your turn, after you've already decided if any of the equipment has triggered when you've taken a die, you can pay 3 silver and change that die face to anything that you want. So it's a way of basically getting the wild icon, but if there are no wild ones to take and you really want to change it to something else, you pay the 3 silver and you can do your thing. So I've talked about what you can do on the player board depending on where the dice are at. Like I said, you can either take the income, you can take and do the die ability, or you can recruit the townsfolk. But let's talk about what each one of these abilities are. So, like I said, the Joker will allow you to change the die face to any of the other ones that you want. You'll then be able to either take the money, take the action, or recruit that townsfolk. The Pickaxe will allow you to take 1 gold nugget from the magic gold bag. Equipment allows you to take 1 of the equipment that's in the general store. Cattle will allow you to take 1 extra cow and put it on your board. The wood will allow you to take a wood token and put that on your wagon. And then finally, the medicine will allow you to take a medicine token and put that on your wagon. So now that I've showed you how the game is played, let's get Dad's thoughts, and then I'm also going to let you know what my lunch group thinks of the game. Plus, we might have a special guest contributor. So let me start by saying that I really like this game. It is on the lighter side. It's an easy game to teach. It's an easy game to learn. Takes roughly about an hour to play. I've played it at all player counts. Obviously, a 2-player game you can get done in less than an hour. A 4-player game you're probably looking at a little bit more. But the turns go quick, very fast. Really shouldn't be too much AP prone issues that you have to worry about here, because when you take that die, like I said, you're either taking it for the income, for the die face, or you're recruiting a townsfolk. So when you have these limited choices, you know, you should not get wrapped up in the AP, but at the same time, there are meaningful choices, because you need to try to figure out what it is you need, maybe what it is somebody else needs, and you're trying to disrupt their plans. The quality of the components is really good. Like I said, we've got nice wooden first player marker there. All of the cardboard bits are nice and thick, nice and sturdy. The card stock is really good finish, nice artwork on the cards. Same with the city. There are actually 5 different townsfolk decks, A, B, C, D, and E. And you're only going to use 2 of them in a game, so there's a lot of replayability on the combinations that you're going to get based on the cards that you use. Same with the city cards. Like I said, you know, we've got a deck of, or a huge stack of these cards that we're going to use, but we're only going to use 9 in a game, so you don't know which ones of those city cards are going to come out. There's also 8 different player boards, so for your first game, they usually recommend that everybody starts with the standard Pioneer, but then afterwards, after everyone is familiar, then you can get into the ones that have the special ones. So like here, you've got different abilities and different starting resources for all of those. So these really add to the replayability as well. And I've only played as a few of them, so there's still quite a few that I have not played. You also see that you get a ton of the equipment tokens. So only a handful of those are going to come out on a given game. So you really never know what that's going to be. So that also adds to the replayability. So all of that combined, I really like it. Simple dice drafting game, easy enough that you can teach just about anybody, and they're up and playing within minutes. So I've taught this game to, I think, about everybody that is in my game group, and they have all really enjoyed it. In fact, I have not heard a single negative from anyone that I've taught the game to, and it's kind of been the reverse. People are saying, hey, I want to play that again. Bring it, you know, tomorrow or the next day, or, you know, on the Friday game days, because they really want to play it. They like that it's simple to play, turns are fast, basically the same reasons that I had given in my review. It's been a big hit with the group, so I think it's safe to assume that everybody gives it a thumbs up. Now let's hear from that special guest reviewer.
Hi, this is Chris, and talking a little bit about Pioneer Days. I'm assuming that Tim the Dad has already walked you through the details of the game and how it's played, so I'll just start with my thoughts. First, the components. The dice are really good. They're a little on the small side, but the icons and everything are very clear and legible. The white print on the colored dice makes it easy to see from a distance. It has a lot of good wooden components like the wooden cows and your score markers. Wooden pieces are always a plus for me. One of the downsides, though, on these is the player colors are all very similar. They're just different shades of brown. So there could be a little bit of differentiation there. Sometimes you forget what color you are because it's not very pronounced. The cardboard, all of the cardboard is nice and thick. And so even with repeated plays, you're not going to wear that out very quickly. The boards, again, you have 2 player boards. You have the scoreboard and you have the disaster tracks, and both are put together really well. In fact, there's a little bit of finish on the back so that it's not going to slide around on the table on you. The bags that are included are nice. I know some people don't like the felt feel bags, but I do. So those are nice and large enough to put your hand in. The art is fun, it's cartoony. You can see by the box lid, they've done a really good job. High contrast colors, which is always fun. The graphics on all of the components are clear. The font is easy to read. And all of the pieces, the artwork makes sense on all of them. So from a gameplay perspective, it's a dice drafting game. I always really enjoy the dice drafting games. What makes this more fun, though, is when you do the dice drafting, it's not just one choice of which die am I going to take, but when you take a particular die, then you have a choice of 3 different things that it could be. It can be the resource that's shown on the die, it can be money, or it can be the character that's underneath it. So there are a lot of really good choices. The other thing is being able to see the disaster tracks moving so you know what you need to plan for in advance. So seeing that visually in a nice big board really helps to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. One of the things that catches me at the end of the game is the very last thing that happens is all of those disasters are going to move one more time. So you really want to make sure that it's not just the die that's left at the end of that final round, but everything's going to move one more time, and you may need to have some additional resources for that. So this is a game that I've enjoyed at 2, 3, and 4 players. It progresses nicely, scales nicely with the additional dice. So at 2-player, you just have less dice that you're drafting from. But the play is nice and competitive at all 3-player counts. So 2 big thumbs up from me. Thanks a lot.
So that is Pioneer Days from Tasty Minstrel. Like I said, highly recommended by myself and all of my buddies. So we will catch you guys next time. If you'd like to get a better look at all the components, please check out our unboxing video. If you would like to support us, you can visit patreon.com/dadvdaughter.
Like and follow us on Facebook to stay current on our show schedule, sneak peeks at future shows, and to interact with us.